So up front, I'm joined by the radical farmer. This is a man of many words. I've been learning so much from him this past week as we've just met. He's someone that believes in empowerment. He believes that God has given each and every one of us a gift, and it will be injustice to God to not use the gift that God has given you to the best of your ability. He is a man that began from humble beginnings and is now the best organic farmer in Zambia. No educational background of farming, but the educated farmers organically are coming to him and asking, how is it possible that you are able to accomplish much good having never learned? Does that remind you of someone? Jesus, best teacher, better than the teachers that are trained, yet men in the Bible come and say, how knoweth this man these things, having not learned? So the same goes to Mr. Radical Farmer, and this afternoon he'll be sharing how the Lord has led in his life. Good afternoon, Mr. Radical. How are you doing?
Organic afternoon to you.
Organic afternoon to you too. Mr. Radical Farmer, so your name is Abel. Please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, so my full name is Abel Hangoma. Abel Hangoma. I'm the third born in a family of 11. So I grew up from a farm setup. My parents are peasant farmers. So my academic qualification is I completed grade 12, then I started computer engineering. Then I also, so the tertiary part is whereby my parents couldn't afford to pay for me tuition fees. So then there's a neighbor of mine who had a camera that I borrowed. Then I started doing photography and also borrowed a bicycle. So I would move around like the whole day capturing pictures. So I did photography for about 4 years, but the first year I was saving money. I saved money so that I could pay my tuition fees. So I managed to pay my tuition fees. When I went to school, I paid for the whole year. Then that year, I was raising money for the coming year. So the reason why I decided to sponsor myself, because my parents were not in the capacity to pay for me. And by that time, they told me to wait for my elder sister to finish. But she kept on rewriting. So, you know, in Africa, there's that order whereby you don't have to get married before your elder sister. So there's that protocol that you follow. But I knew clearly that even if I wait, I'm not going to go to school. So I had to find ways and means to do that. And actually, if I were going to bring all the details on how that happened, it's like God was filling in what I couldn't. But I did the best on my side, and then it worked out. Then when I completed school at even Honest, I couldn't find employment. So I'd move from one place to another, looking like fixing people's computers, making websites for them. And by then, websites were not very common in Zambia. So then I opened my own company, do some businesses. Then eventually I found, through that job, I found someone was looking for a web developer. So that's how someone recommended, oh, this guy actually makes websites. So that's how I was hired. I was working there. I worked there for like 1.5 years. So I used to read a lot. I'm one person who believes in not just getting what people say, but I believe in having my own base where I can stand and I understand things from my own point of view and I can defend myself. So through reading, my young brother introduced me to Spirit of Prophets, and he told me, you see, you have to stop eating meat. And all those things. So you find that I loved meat so much. Like when there's vegetables at home, I would leave the vegetables, go in the bush, hunt, come and eat the fish. So when I hear something, I make sure that I go and find out. So you know, when a young brother tells you, challenges you, even though you've heard but you say no, it doesn't make sense. But behind the scene, I went, did my own research and established, then I made a decision. I'm one person who, when it's right there. I don't delay decision. I just say, no, here I'm stopping. That is the end of it. And that's how I stopped. So then I heard about Riverside. That's how I started planning to go there while I was working there. So my boss actually laughed at me when I told him to go and I'm going to school. He said, hey,
you're saying a lot of things. Just wait for me, and so that we can move together. Because now you said a lot of things. So first of all, let's go back. You finished matric and you couldn't go for your tertiary education because of lack of finance.
Yeah.
You didn't let that stop you.
No.
You didn't let it stop you.
No.
You pursued on and you started doing photography to raise money so that you can pay for your tuition fees.
Yes. So here's one funny thing. So the money that I used to make in photography was a lot of it. And
what kind of photography were you doing?
In those days, those were still pictures using a digital camera. I had a very small digital camera, and in that area, I'm the only one who had a digital camera. So people used to use those films whereby you capture analog photography. So now what used to happen is when I go out to take pictures, you take a picture and you show someone, people were very excited.
Yeah.
And then now, the guys that had those old analog pictures, when I arrived, they used to hide their cameras. So it's like I was in charge. I was just getting the best pictures.
Wow.
And you see, one thing that God has blessed me is to learn to work with what you have. So when I got that camera, it was a borrowed camera. And what I did with it is it had no memory card, so I could only take 12 pictures. So I took the first 12 pictures, and people paid down payment. So use that money to go and develop the pictures and part of it for transport. Then when I took the second phase, I had raised enough money to buy a memory card so that I can actually capture more. So I used to go to town once in a week, so to go and develop the pictures. Then there's a time I took a risk. There was a wedding, so they invited me to capture a wedding. Now, that camera was too small for a wedding. So I took a risk, talked to my friends, bigger photographers that way. I said, borrow me your camera. So I borrowed the camera, which was bigger than the one which I had. Then what I did is I took a risk. They had not fully hired me. So there is what we would call suicide, whereby you take random pictures, you go and print them, then you take them to the owners. So I was targeting those big guys that I knew that they have money. So I would take random pictures and they were looking very nice. Then after that, go around, give them. Then after that wedding, I raised enough money to buy that very camera. Then I had a bigger camera now. So I had no competition. I would capture weddings and all those things. So it really enhanced how I was raising money for school.
All right.
Yes. So what I wanted to say is actually, during that period when I was at school, I used to make a lot of money. But immediately I stopped school, I thought I'll buy a vehicle within a short period of time. Now, immediately I finished school, business became very tough. That's how I stopped photography, went to town, looked for employment at learning down and all those things. But when I look back, I can clearly see that actually God was preparing me for something. But I'll keep on sharing.
Yeah. So I'm now interested to hear your religious background.
Okay. So my religious background, we grew up from a family where it's a normal Adventist family.
Okay.
So travel like 10 kilometers to go to church. So my father used to get us on a bicycle, would go there. By then, it was quite a distance. So then, when they opened branches around, my father stopped going to church, but he would always encourage us to go to church. So I'd go to camps, and my father loves reading so much. So, and he would, like my mother ended in grade 7, my father ended in grade 12, but he loved reading so much. So he would tell us stories like, you see, me, if it wasn't your grandfather, I would have been a very rich guy. So because
Why is he blaming your grandfather?
So what happened is he was supposed to go and study in Egypt. So that the grandfather said, no, who is going to remain with the cows at home since you're the eldest? So you're not going to go to school and we're going to stay. So that's how he was left to stay.
So he's holding that.
So he would reference, like, he would use it to encourage us. Say, there's no one to stop you. Me, I was stopped by your and my mother would say, me, I was going to be a doctor. Now, your father, your grandfather didn't want to sponsor me beyond this because all my elder sisters got pregnant. So he says, even you're just wasting money. I'm not going to sponsor. But my mother says, like, she would pride herself that me, I'm a mathematician. But she doesn't know how to read, but she would always encourage us to work hard. Like the work ethics I learned from my mother, how to live with people I learned from my father. Like my father, even someone comes, is shouting at home when he just tell him to sit and he starts speaking all the anger is gone.
Yeah.
So there is the way he uses Proverbs 15 verse 1 that says, a soft answer turns away wrath.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want you to tell the audience how the name or the story behind the name Abel.
Abel. So the way the name Abel is, I was named after my grandfather. So, there's that thing whereby people would want to maintain a name because of the traits of that person. So they used to say he was a very generous person, very hardworking, very kind, and very good person. So they gave me that name, not from a biblical point of view, but from the name of my grandfather, who was Abel. Yeah, so that's how I was given. I don't know. I don't even think they really know the meaning of the word in the Bible. But so they say, no, we gave you this name after your grandfather because of these traits. And I think even us, it's very important to build good names so that people will find it very safe to name people after your name.
Yeah. So do you resemble any character traits with your grandfather?
No, that's what they tell me.
That's what they tell you. You told me earlier on that your grandfather was a very hard-working man.
Yes.
And that hard working he imparted to your parents, and your parents then imparted it to you. I don't know, can you just briefly tell me how your parents' influence made you who you are today? So,
my mother gave us very simple principles on how to live. So, number one, in terms of working, where we would stay, we were fetching water 3 kilometers away. So, we'd go with wheelbarrows, sometimes we'd go with bicycles. So, and my mother didn't take excuses, so I don't even take excuses myself also. So waking up, she gave us one principle. It says, the sun should not find you on the bed, and the sun should not set when you're at someone's place. So that means you have to wake up early and you have to be home before the sun sets. Then she used to wake up very early, around 5, she would have already gone to the field. So when she goes, she wakes you up first. Then she goes. When she comes back, she finds you sleeping. She just pour out on you, and we have to go. And then in the field, we were given targets. Everyone was supposed to finish the target. You don't finish, you don't knock off. So it was just very clear. And actually, my father, though my father wasn't very he wasn't very hardworking, working in the field, but he would say, see, your mother, from the time I married her, she has never gone back to the parents to ask for food. No. She always eats from here from the time that I married her. And she would say, my father would say, see, from the time that he started living, he said, we have never lacked food. So we always worked very hard. So work very, very hard with the means that were within our reach and everything. People used to laugh at us and say, no, they are treating you like slaves and you're working hard like they are not your children. Even we were not allowed to go and pray with other kids. Other kids were very free. They would go and pray soccer and all those things. But us, we had a list of things to do. So it was back to back, whereby our plate was full. We had responsibility to handle. I remember I started washing for myself when I was around 5 years old. So I go say, no, these are clothes, you have to wash them. And I also learned economy from my mother. She would measure the amount of soap you're supposed to use for washing. She would measure, in terms of cooking oil, she would measure for you. And those delicate things. So us would want to misuse, but right now when I reflect back, I look at those principles, they, as primitive as they were, they have helped me so much in life. Yes.
Do you think if parents today were following the same set of values that your parents instilled in you, the world would have been a different place?
Too much. Because I think many parents need to be parented themselves. Because instead of parents raising children, children are raising parents. And they end up having children. They are all children. There's need of making it very clear whereby you see a parent should be a parent. Because I've learned this from my children. If you don't stand to show them the way, they're going to show you the way. Whether it is wrong or not, children have got a way to know your weaknesses, and they know that here you are serious, here you are not serious. So I think if parents would take up those principles that were used to raise people in the olden days, I think the world would have been far much better than the way it is. Yes, we would have rebellious children, we've always had rebellious, but at least we have more good children and more responsible children than what we have in this generation.
So since your parents didn't necessarily have an educational background, education is not a prerequisite to being a good parent? Do you need to say, I need to go to a school to become a good parent?
But I think what has been coined as education is not education. So education is not going in a classroom to learn. Education is, I would say, these are lessons of life on how we should live. And as Adventists, I think we are fortunate because we have been given a proper definition of education. That is the harmonious development of the intellect, the physical, and also the mental. And we have coined and linked education with speaking English, knowing how to write, and all those things. There are people that I know that are well educated, but they don't know how to speak English. They don't know how to speak, how to write, but they are able to live a better, meaningful life, and they are very useful. That doesn't mean that reading is not important. That doesn't mean English is important. And actually, English is not a definition of education. It is just a language of communication. You see what the Chinese are capable of doing, speaking in Chinese and all those things. But I think somehow we've missed it in terms of what education really is. Because in terms of parenting, my mother can raise useful children more than PhD holders and all those things. So you can't learn how to parent in a classroom. There are parents that are well educated from the worldly point of view, but you find that they are failing to take care of, to educate their own children. So there's a broader view that we have to look at education. That's what I think, and that is what I've seen and what I've experienced.
Now you're all grown up, and now do you want to tell us a bit more about your family? I believe you have a family of your own.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So, so here's the thing. So I'm a married man with 3 kids. They're all boys. I'm turning 31 on the 8th of March. And I'm waiting for birthday presents. So now, here's the thing. I married when I was 25.
All right.
So I gave myself a room. My father used to tell us, you see, when you go to school, you have to choose between girls and school. So, and in grade 12, there was no one to...
So, sorry to cut you. So you have to choose between school or girls?
Yes, he made it very clear.
Students, are you listening?
So he made it very clear. Say, see, he would give us an example where he sets 2 roads. Maybe there's another one going this, and then he would start walking like this. Say, so how can this? Because as they white, then he would say, see, no matter how we try to balance up the 2, eventually you're going to pick one. And he would give examples of others that tried to do and how they failed and all those things.
Talk about object lessons.
Yeah.
This one was quite visual.
So I made a decision. I said, okay, I'm not going to propose anyone until I finish school. And I have only one reason of proposing. I'm not going to date anyone. I'm going to propose the person I'm going to marry. So all my high school, all my tertiary school, I didn't propose to anyone. So here's what I did. You see, when I was at high school, there was none of my relatives were interested in us. So now my father had to find a place. When I was around 14 years, I had to rent a house in town where I was staying, cooking for myself and taking care of myself. There were temptations. I had friends that were drinking, I had friends who were bringing girls and all those things, but I didn't participate. So there are only 3 places that I would go. Instead of finding me at school, church or home, only 3 places. Even when I was in tertiary, you'd find me, he said, I'm school, church, home, that's all. So there were so many things happening, and I was actually very shocked that there were so many wicked things happening behind the scene. So, and I raised the standard so high so that friends that had bad manners didn't like me, say, no, this guy is a critic. So, and I wasn't ashamed. They used to call me farmer when I was studying computer engineering. So farmer, because every weekend I would go to the farm. When I come back in the morning, I would bring maize for them and all those things, so they would call me farmer. But I made it very clear that I've come here for this purpose. I'm not going to propose any girl, and I don't think I was also attractive to many girls, because...
Before you continue with that, I just want you to highlight or tell me how it was that out of all the negative influences that was on you, people didn't like you because of your determination, and it seems you're not going to compromise anyway. You're determined on what you wanted to do. How did you manage to now overcome these temptations? Because I can imagine it's quite tempting to watch all people that are the same age doing a certain type of thing and you just there sticking out like a sore thumb. How did you manage to not compromise?
And to be honest, what helped me so much, it was the Word of God. So it was the time that I studied the Bible. It is the time that I listened to sermons like, I don't know where I got that. It must be in school. I got the sermons of C.D. Brooks.
Wow.
I listened to all of them. I listened to Mark Woodman, all of the videos. Those CDs that he used to do. Water Faith, Stephen Boer. So, and you see, they made so much sense to me. I had no clue I didn't know much about Ellen White, but those sermons, they helped me quite a lot.
If I can ask, how old were you at this time?
But then I was around 20, actually from my 20s to my 20s to 20, actually 19, 20, 21, 22. During that period, that's when I was in school.
Okay.
So I was listening to sermons. Even in my laptop, it was loaded with just sermons. So when I go in school, there was that clear distinction between what these guys are doing is not right. And I'm one person who wasn't ashamed to stand for what I know. And even right now, I'm very okay. I'm very comfortable to be different. And I don't care what other people say. I believe God gave, just like everyone has got his own heads. So mine also functions. I'm not. I would rather lead than follow what I don't know. So I don't want to be a mere reflector of other men. I don't want to look like anyone. I just want to look like myself. If you copy me, that is okay. But as so I said that is the standard that actually had said. Like I remember at one point of time where we were debating in class. It was a class of men. We were 25 of us. So the guys used to play video games so much. So I didn't know much how bad video games were. But I remember very well, I was debating with the whole class that video games are bad. Like, just for the sake of debating, we just want to prove a point that you're right. So I remember also about beer, they were talking about beer. I would stand against the whole class. Like in our class we were just about maybe 3, 4 of us who were not drinking. The rest, like Fridays, I don't know if people drink here every Friday. But Fridays...
I hope not.
Yeah, Friday is the day that people would go out drinking, and the students, they would buy a very big bottle, they're drinking and all those things. And most of them, they are now like addicted to beer. Yeah.
Wow. So you're saying that what kept you from falling into those negative, bad influences was the Word of God?
Pure, yes.
The Bible tells us that your word have I hidden in my heart, that I may not sin against thee. And we see that as a practical example in your life, Mr. Abel. Getting back to you telling us about how you got your wife, please continue that.
So, there is this woman who was very hardworking at where we used to stay. So my father would tease my mother that, you see, if I married that woman, I was just going to be sleepy because she works very hard, the husband is lazy. Then he would tell us, you see, my son, if you find a wife like that one, you'll be very okay. So now, that family were friends, like they were just ladies. So I would go help them, like when I go hunting, I would pass through, give them a bed, I proceed when there's grass, So one day I was working, like the student would go to school and then they come back. So one day I had set standards. Number one, I wanted to marry someone who is natural. That was one standard.
Natural. What do you mean by natural?
Natural hair, no painting, no makeup, just a proper standard.
Why is that?
That was very clear. I said, no matter how, like, if you break this standard, I will just look at you like another person.
Why is that? Why are you so strict?
No, it made a lot of sense to me. It is a biblical standard and all those things. Because I didn't want to have a wife whom I would have problems with in the future. So I wanted someone who makes sense to me because this is going to be my life partner. So one day, I went there to, I was slashing for them. Then the mother asked me, like jokingly, I was young, she said, which one of my daughter would you want me to give you? So, in my heart, I knew what I wanted. Then I said, no, not one of them. Now, the young sister to my wife, like was very interested in me. Like, you know that thing whereby you associate with someone, you haven't told anyone anything, but they're jealous of you and they see with other ladies and all those things. But it didn't work out. Then the elder sister made sense. So she would smile nicely, she was natural. Then I said, no, this one is the one I'm going to marry. So, and I told myself I'm going to marry at the age of 25. So by the age of 25, I had my own house, I was responsible, I was working and all those things. So in my whole life, I've only proposed one person.
Wow.
And it was because, one, my parents had recommended, then two, I didn't marry a stranger, I married someone that I knew. I didn't start the homework of trying to find out about the person when we were in a relationship. I did my part before we even got into the relationship. And with the recommendation of my parents, I said, no, this is the one. It took...
So you actually spoke to your parents about who you were going to marry?
No. Like, you know, you can't talk to them. It's like in our culture, that is a little bit forbidden. But now, based on the comments that were passing,
so
no,
you're
if
just
you,
picking up.
Yes, so he said, my father said, if you marry a wife like that woman, whom himself was wishing to marry, not just teasing my mother, say no, if I find, like my mother would sometimes stinge him money and all those things, but say no, if that one, because even when she works, the husband is doing nothing, she would bring money to the husband. Now, my mother wouldn't give my father money when she works, it's hers, you know, that kind of arrangement. So, what am I saying? Those comments, they made me feel safe that this is the right pattern. So, and when I proposed, it took 3 years for her to accept me. There was a boyfriend who was there. Then when I went to her, but you know, you didn't tell me that you've got someone, but she had not yet accepted. They said, I cannot have 2 people at a go. Then I said, I think this is the right thing. So I said, okay, since this is the case, I wouldn't also want to interfere with the relationship. I wouldn't want someone to do so. It's okay. Then I was slowly moving away, but my heart was still there. Then eventually I heard that they broke up and then he started drawing close and everything. But anyway, it worked out. Like we were in courtship for 7 years together. Then now, when I met the health reform message and she was eating meat, and when I would go visit her, I would take her pie, then I knew that we were going to have a problem in our house. So I had made it very clear.
Before you go there, I just want to ask, how did you, before you tell me how she accepted the message, how did you first accept the message? Because it seems like you loved to hunt.
Okay. So how I accepted the message is, it was logical. So my young brother told me, but I'd never heard about it. I'm one person who loves health so much. I have been doing a lot of research, different things, but I've never come across the health message. So when my young brother told me, I went and did a research. I remember I listened to the sermons by Pastor Jeremiah Davis. You know how he speaks. You'd want to repent the same day. Jesus is coming tomorrow. So I went and did my own study. I studied the writings of Ellen White, and I studied just secular diet and did research behind the scenes and everything, and it made a lot of sense. So and when I just got that information, I made a decision. This is the end of it. And now, if I could show you how I used to eat, it was very fun. It's whereby you've made a decision and you don't know much about how to eat a balanced diet. I think that is one of the challenges. I remember I lost weight. I could feel very light. But praise God, when I came to learn about Riverside, that's why I went and learned how to balance meals. And I know there are so many people that are struggling on how to balance people. And if Pure Right could be doing cooking classes, just throwing them. You see, one thing that I love about this place is the meals are so balanced. You eat and you feel you're a human being. Like me, I've gained weight. This one, yeah. I could feel my trousers has reduced and all those things that I think I have to go on a slimming diet. So what I'm saying is there are so many people that are stranded. If you could be doing, I'm appealing now. Yes. And you should answer my call. So I think it would be helpful to many people if you can be doing just free cooking classes, like even twice a week. I've seen you have a menu here. This would really help out a lot of people. I don't know if I've diverted, but the point, that's how I received the message after doing my own research. Like right now, I can preach the health message even without quoting the Bible, without quoting spiritual prophecy. When I just add these, it's because you see, certain things you don't even need the Bible to know that they're wrong. You just go in nature, study. Like I've seen behind the scenes whereby animals are sick and they take them to the, like I saw that my parents doing it. An animal is sick, it can't move, they kill it, they take it to the butcher. I've seen broiler chickens, they die mortality, they kill them, they slaughter them, they're actually dead, you just cut off the neck. Then you take them. So I know what really happens behind the scenes. And I've read, so I'm able to stand on my own. And I think in most cases, why people find it hard to change is because they don't take the effort to know the truth. And sometimes they judge what they don't know. And many people that actually say bad things about Ellen White, they've never read about what she has written and all those things. Like as in for me, even in my agricultural practices, my mental strength, I've gained it a lot from reading Spirit of Prophecy, the principle that I gained there. And I don't care what people say, whether they believe it or not, that's their own problem. Because when God comes, He will judge us individually. But as in for me, it makes a lot of sense. Recently, I was reading the book Education. I read all the books of Ellen White, cover to cover. Right now, I'm rereading them. And every time I read, it's like they've got a layer of truth. Like the book of Education about service, loving to serve humanity, all those principles I get them from the Bible and also from the Spirit of Prophecy.
So you're saying before you accepted the out message, you first needed to study this issue out for yourself and then understand it. And then you are able to practice this thing when you fully understand what you are doing.
Yeah, that's okay. As in for me, I love to make decisions. Informed decisions.
That's very important.
And I don't want to quote anyone. If there's need of quoting, I should be able to stand on my own.
That's true. Because if you ask many people, why are you not eating meat? My mother said meat, and you cannot stand on your own.
No,
so you need to be informed before you can make a decision.
Yes.
Now, how did you get to convince your wife to make the same decision?
So, I used to take sermons to her, but it didn't make sense. So then I have to come up with a more powerful strategy because there were two things. It's either she learns and agrees or I leave her because I knew it was going to be the problem. I don't know, but that's the decision that I made. I think God deals with us based on what we know. Like reflecting now, I think it was a too tough decision. So I tried to negotiate with her. She would accept, but you'd see that she hasn't. So I moved from taking her meat pies, I started taking apples and all those things. So then an opportunity came. I asked her, would you be interested to go and study at Riverside? Because there was no one to sponsor her also. Then she agreed that now we are done. Then we applied, then we went. So now when we arrived at Riverside, they told us, no, here we don't allow courtship and all those things, and us, we're already in a relationship. So then what I did is, okay, now this is a problem. What are we going to do? So I went to see the director. I said, how about those that came courting? What are you going to do? Then they say, see, we don't know, do your parents know? Now, I had not already told my parents. I said, no, I think they. So I told him that they know. Say, if we were to call them, they know. I said, no, if you call my mother, yes, but I told my mother. I said, no. You've got it there, So, but now, they said it's either you treat yourselves as if you're not in a relationship here, or one of you should go. So now, if he's going, me, I'm going to go. She's going to remain. Because it would be easier for me to come back than for her. And since it is me who was paying part of her tuition fees, and also to make it easier, I also sponsored my young sister so that they can be working together and all those things. So that's how it worked. When we studied together at Riverside, then it actually softened the ground. Then when we married, Riverside was interested in me. I was there. Then when we married, we continued living at Riverside. So it is whereby God helped me establish a common ground where we could be able to stand and also grow together.
I like the fact that you did all these things before you got married.
Yes.
Because usually people say, no, man, we'll fix these things when we get married, and you live a life of correcting mistakes that you're supposed to sort out during the courtship time. So you said you studied computer engineering.
Yes.
Do you briefly just want to tell us how you got to make that decision of studying that?
So how I made that decision, when I went to college, when I had raised money, I said, okay, now I love journalism so much because of the background of photography. So when I went there, I found that journalism course was full. then you see it's whereby you've told people that this year me I'm going to school.
Yeah.
So then they say, then the registrar told me, no, there is another course called computer engineering where they fix computers, and my father used to fix radios, so I was interested. So I think I can take this one. Then when I registered, you find that I wasn't picked. So went to school to check for my name. It wasn't on the list. Said, but my name is not on the list. No, you were not picked. There are many people that apply. So now what am I going to tell my friends? I told them I'm going to school. Then I said, okay, but what can I do since me I want to come in school? So okay, the other thing that you can do is when they open schools, there are people that apply and they don't come. So you can come and reapply as a chancellor. So actually prior to that, there's one of my aunties who told me it's very hard to get in college. So you have to bribe someone. So me, I know someone. So let me register on your behalf. So for me to be able to move around, give me some money so that I can be able to organize for it. So I gave her the money, but it didn't work out. So one thing that I learned, you see, things don't work when you don't show up yourself. And sometimes we are scared of nothing. We are dealing with human beings who want to put someone in front of you and all those things. So I learned, like, you see, some of the things you have to go head on. So I went there, I got first-hand information, and when I applied as a chancellor, I was picked within a week. Then that's how I managed to get into school.
Wow. Now I'm going to transition now to who you are now, because now I believe you're not doing computer engineering anymore. So from being, usually when someone gives you a name in school, you don't want to associate yourself with that at all. People are calling you farmer, mocking you. Now you're a farmer. How did that happen?
So how it happened is, as I was working at Riverside, so I used to do a lot of computer things and all those things. So then one day I got frustrated when I went to the market. I bought vegetables and you could test the chemicals and the fertilizer in it. I actually almost stopped eating regularly.
You could taste?
You could test it.
How does it taste?
It tastes a little bit like you're eating a chemical. Have you ever eaten a chemical before? So the taste is very weird. I don't know how I can describe it, but it tastes like salt or urea, something like that. Have you maybe urea?
Okay, so it does not taste like a vegetable.
It doesn't taste like that. Right. So I said I have to start growing my own food. So that's how I cleared the back. Where I was, it was a thicket and it was a rocky place. So I cleared that space, then started looking about information on how to grow food naturally. Then from that small bucket, it was like a 5 by 5, actually even not more than that, like a 2 by 5. So that is where I started growing my own vegetables. Then lucky enough, I was very hardworking. So they promoted me from a smaller house to a bigger house with bigger space.
At Riverside?
At Riverside, okay. Yes. So there now I established a bigger garden. So now what happened is, you see, I had a variety of vegetables, a variety of food there that I was growing in the front yard. Then what triggered my mind is when I finish work, I would rush to the garden. So no matter during weekend, I would work through in the garden. So what happened is when I'm working in the garden, I would feel more happy and more satisfied than when I'm working with computers. Then I said, maybe this is my thing. You see? So now I became so passionate, and then I made a decision that I have to go to the farm and start doing farming. Now I didn't have the money. I looked for people that we can partner with, and it didn't work out. So I started germinating. So when I made a decision that I have to leave Riverside, one, I started gathering seeds, trying to germinate things. I borrowed some plastic, like 20 of them, so that I can plant the fruits that are there. So that as I go, at least I go something where I can plant fruits on my farm. Then when I started picking seeds, what surprised me is I didn't know that I could germinate a seed. When I planted it, saw it germinate, it excited me so much. So I couldn't see a single seed. Whenever I see a seed, useful or useless, I would pick it, go and germinate it. And when it germinates, I was very excited. Then one man passed through, and actually he told me that I want 1,000 moringa. So, and that was 1,000 moringa by 10 kwacha. That is about 10,000. Then I'm like, so this thing can make money. So now, I had never planted moringa before, but I didn't refuse the offer. I said, no, I can do it. Then when he went, I started asking people, how do you germinate moringa? Then they told me about the cuttings, they told me about the seeds. Then I tried both, but the seeds turned out to work. Then I said, so this thing can germinate. Then another man again came and told me I want 2,500. And unfortunately, these people didn't even buy the seeds. But now what that did, it opened up my mind that actually this is a very powerful industry. The seedling industry is a very powerful industry. So then I started planting seedlings. So at Riverside, they would plant bananas and throw away the empty pot plastics. So I would go and pick them. Then now feeding the soil there, on the yard that I was, they couldn't allow me. So there was a bin where they would throw leaves. So I would go very early in the morning when people are sleeping, collect the leaves, make up a compost, then made soil. And lucky enough, there's a part where there was a very big heap of compost. So I made that soil, packed it. Then eventually, I planted just different things. Some of them I just had to throw them out because they were not sellable. But those that were sellable, I could propagate grapes, lychees, mangoes, different varieties. Then people started buying. They are buying. And funny enough, my wife didn't support me. She thought, no, you are a computer engineer. How can you be playing with a soil like this? This is an embarrassment. I would invite her to come and work with me. No, me, I'm busy. So now, but she was supposed to believe in that dream. So what I see, okay,
she was supposed to.
No, she's supposed to. So now I realized that, you see, now she has to get into this. Because when I go out, like maybe for 2 days I'm not around, I would find the trees are almost dying. Because she wasn't passionate about it. So then what I did is when I started selling, I made her a treasure. So okay, when you sell, you'll be keeping the money. So now what happened is we started making more money from the seedlings, more than the money that we were getting paid.
At Riverside.
Yes. So it moved on to a point whereby I would make 8 times more money than my salary. So what I learned is, you see, when you're transitioning into something, if you're working, you should be able to make money from that thing, actually more money, because life should be progressive. Not whereby you're moving from point A to point B and things are worsening. And if you do it godly, you find that God gets us from the worst to the what? To the better. So I realized that actually this thing would be able to sustain us. So that is how that transition happened, because of the contentment. And also I was responding to the country living message. I wanted to be independent when I still have energy to work for myself and to stay for myself. And with that very money, we managed to buy 2 farms. Wow. There was one which was this side, and so there was a 4 hectares and another 5 hectares on the other side. So the other one where we are right now, I had actually said, no, this is where I'm going to stay, where I'm very old, and all those things. Then the other one, we're going to do business with it. So after learning those skills, and I was writing a lot, it's whereby I didn't have good writing skills, but I would share on the internet, and people would criticize me, and the more I wrote, the more I improved. Wow. To the point that critics stopped. Like, for example, right now I'm playing the guitar. Me, I'm not ashamed of sharing things based on my level. I'm playing the guitar, I'm learning, but I'm still willing to share. I don't wait until everything is perfect. I'll perfect while I'm doing it. So I'm not a perfectionist. So you'd be very shocked that some of you have been inspired by my music before it is even perfect. Who liked my music?
No, just for the record, I liked it too.
Oh, thank you.
I liked it too. Now, before you continue telling me about your farm journey, I'm interested to just tell us, you've been mentioning Riverside a lot, and some of our audience might not know what Riverside is. Do you just want to tell us what that is?
So Riverside is an agriculture institute. I think in Africa, if it's not the biggest in terms of Adventism, it has been there since 1964. Wow. They have spread about close to 1,000 one-day churches. They've been training missionaries ever since. They have a wellness center. But at the same time also, they have bananas, a plantation of bananas, about 56 hectares, and then 6 hectares of wheat and also soybeans.
Sure.
Yeah. So and recently they opened, they opened a secondary school, and it is one of the places that Pastor Ted Wilson, when he came, visited. Recently, yes. So he visited 4 places. That was in Copperbelt, Lusaka, Riverside, and Lusango. So it is one of the places that he visited, because the father also to Ted Wilson also visited Lusango. Yeah. So it is a place that has been there for some time in terms of Adventism and also in terms of evangelism. If you know, Merin Pretorius was there, Connie Blitz was also there. Quite a number of missionaries have been to Riverside, and they have actually done quite a lot. Like in terms of evangelism, I would say Riverside has done even more than the church. Yes.
Wow.
I think so. I think yeah. The church, in terms of like being an institute on its own, independent institute, they have done quite a lot, and the church actually respects that very much. Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. So when you went to Riverside, because you mentioned that you went there with your wife to be to Riverside, what were you studying there? Why did you go?
So there, when we went to study lifestyle. So lifestyle is where you learn about healthy, how to live healthy, how to treat diseases, using natural remedies. So it was responding to what I read in the writings of Ellen White about being a missionary. So I was looking, where can I go to learn about these things? And the place that I was only doing, I think it's the only place in Zambia that is actually, it is the only Adventist school that is training missionaries at the moment. I don't know any. Apart from these, maybe one-day missionaries, but otherwise, as an institute that is committed to do that, it is just Riverside.
Wow.